How to adjust Power King hydraulic relief pressure 101. First, locate your hydraulic control valve. Second, locate the relief valve cap. Next, get yourself 3/4 inch wrench, or in some of the older cases, you don't actually have a jam nut. 3/4 inch socket. Loosen that cap up. Don't lose it. Don't lose the little washer. Take the wrench off so you can see as the rain starts to hit. Now, see if we can adjust this a little bit. There we go. Oh, it's a little harsh, but there. So next, you get yourself a flathead screwdriver. Stick it in that slot. You want to loosen your jam nut with your wrench, and if I remember right, you tighten to increase pressure, loosen to decrease pressure. Now let's see if you can hear anything with the rain. Now, if you look back there under the seat on that work port on the valve, you can see a gauge. Right now with this current setup, I can barely see it when I'm using it, but with this gauge in this position, it's in the A port. I think it's A port. Yeah, it's the A port. So, tractor's running, hitch down, doesn't do anything, not even when it hits the end of its travel and it deadheads in the cylinder. However, when it's going up and it deadheads in the up position, where it pressurizes this port, this gauge will read out my pressure. Now, I've got this one here temporarily, especially because we're about to reconfigure this entire hydraulic system. But that reads out for me at 2,000 psi because that's what I adjust that little screw to. Of course, when you're done, put everything back together like you just saw me doing. Make sure everything's good and tight and doesn't move on you. You want to make sure that you hold that relief screw tight when you tighten your jam nut, and then tighten down the cap back on it. See, now one of the things you can do, if you happen to have made yourself some rear remotes, it's going to be a trade-off. So you can take, instead of putting that gauge there, and actually stick it on your rear remote in line with an implement and run the implement. Although that way requires a friend to watch the gauge for you while you make adjustments to reach your desired pressure. These lines, I do believe from the factory, are rated for only 3,000 psi, which is fine because you probably shouldn't be going over about 2,000 psi anyway. It's what most larger tractors run at. One wire hoses are good to 3,000 psi. They're rated for 3,000 psi, but the actual burst pressure is 9,000 psi. So my work pressure is 2,000 psi. That means if I've got something heavy, I can put 2,000 psi into it, but I can only do it at the flow that the pump is rated at, which is, if I remember right, again, is 1.7 gallons per minute, which is a very small pump. But it'll do work at 2,000 psi. Anything beyond that, it'll start to hit that relief, and you get that wonderful squeal from the valve. Now, if there's a jolt or something, that is something that could cause pressure in it, or like you hook up a motor and you run it without a D-spool that allows the fluid to cycle when your valve is in neutral, you're going to put a lot of pressure on the hoses. You might put 9,000 pounds of pressure on the hose. Probably don't need 2-wire hoses. 2-wire hoses are good up to, I can't remember, 5 or 6. I don't bother with 2-wire hoses because I don't have anything that pumps that much pressure, or that I want to run that much pressure at yet. 1-wire hoses are cheaper if you're readjusting your system, but always make sure that on your pressure side you are using steel fittings, not stainless steel. Brass, probably shouldn't recommend. It's says, some sources say, and depending on the quality of the brass, it may be okay for up to 2,000 psi or 3, but probably ought not trust it. If you're running the return side, or you're running your suction side, so anything coming from your tank up to your pump, it's not under pressure. I've actually seen plastic fittings used in those cases on log splitters. You definitely want to use metal on your return side, but definitely use forged or steel, hydraulic specific fittings on your pressure side. So, in a nutshell, that's how you adjust your relief pressure, and be warned, that's a lot of pressure to deal with. So if one of those pops, you're sitting right on top of it.